Hey everybody, what's going on? We're gonna get the show started here in a second. Don't go anywhere, stay right where you are. Some sort of madness is going on with the streaming software. It does not. It refuses to stream to X, and so now I'm on X looking around. And it kind of looks like X just isn't working. X is down. Okay, so we're not going to stream to X. That's an easy choice. Easy question, easy answer. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's do this. I'm going to go like this. We're going to start the pre-show here. What's going on, everybody? I thought I was doing a great job by getting ahead of the whole situation and sending out the text 10 minutes early. And then all this crazy stuff just started happening. You know, it's just how it is. There's no way to do this smoothly. I mean, what do you want from me? You want Fox News? You want CNN? You want a schedule? You want to have a little bit of a heads up? Well, apparently it's impossible. Apparently it's not happening. Sir Darren Knight of the Hungry Pan has given some great advice. Do not like, do not share. No matter what you do, I'm not sure if the reverse psychology is working. It's hard to tell, like literally ever, if anything is working ever. It really feels like we're just kind of podcasting in the dark over here quite a bit. But podcasting in the dark is better than not podcasting at all. That's what it's about. So we're going to start the show here in just a second. Let me make sure recording's going. Yep, that's going. That's great. Psalm 40 says, I just shared this on X. Oops. Psalm 40, how dare you? Oh, you're in big, big trouble, mister, for sharing this. You better hope that somebody is edified and blessed over there. I don't know how you shared it on X. X is not working for me. I got nothing. It's everything just says nothing here, nothing here. No messages. Show 35 posts. There we go. Now things are working. Okay. Well, let's see. X was not working. Now it's working. Let me press go live over on X. We'll see if this works. If not, it's not the end of the world. We don't get a ton of people tuning in on X. Although, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, not working. Huh? Okay. Salt Ball says it's a California problem. Yeah. Well, I'm not in California. Or am I? Sir Darren says, everything is working. Just not at beast system level. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It definitely does not want to stream to X, and I now do have X loading. A lot of good that'll do me. All right. So we're going to do this. Remember, folks, it's a call-in show. You should have a call-in link sitting there in the description of whatever platform that you are watching this on, except for X. But nobody's watching on X. Okay. I'll put it in the chat here just in case anybody needs it again. That's it. We are doing a call-in show. That is what it's all about. So call in, say hi. You know, I never did hear from the guy yesterday who was watching News Talk Live and said he'd call in. He's from South Africa. He'd give us boots on the ground. South Africa. Never heard from the fella. Maybe he emailed us at a different email. I don't know. But hopefully somebody in South Africa calls in. I guess the timing is tough. What is it, like midnight? It's like midnight in South Africa. Okay, the dude should have sent me an email. Maybe he reached out some other way. All right, we're casual. We're having fun, folks. Don't worry. The show is going to officially start in a moment. You know, it occurred to me that I actually don't know if Gons is paying attention when he's editing these things. I'm sure he is, but I don't know for a fact that he is editing out these non-show pre-shows. It's not my job. Not my job, not my problem. And I don't I don't listen to this show afterwards on the podcast version. So who knows what happens? All right. So I suppose we should just get the show started here. We do have the Beyond the Verse. What is this one? Jesus as the Veil. This is very fun. Premiering here. It'll be posting in 4K on Saturday. So stick around for that. But let's just go ahead and get the show started. You know how this works. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to put myself off screen like this. And then I'm going to go down here. I'm going to play the cool music. And then we'll start. How does that sound? Let's do it.
Called it. We got a caller. We got a caller on the line here.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Canary Cry Clubhouse, your favorite late midweek fellowship check-in. Don't worry, we're not diving into the news. We're not diving into the new world. Well, we very much possibly might dive into the New World Order, but this will be strictly based on the leading of the Holy Spirit here, because you know this. It's a call-in show. And you can tune in Thursday if you're listening to the podcast version. Get on the text message alert system. This is especially important for Canary Cry Clubhouse because you don't want to miss it. You want to call in. You want to say hi. So text the word Canary to 877-740-3226. Do it right now. Even if you're on the podcast version, take out your phone. I know you're busy. You're washing dishes. I'll give you a second to dry your hands. Give you a second to park the mower. And here you go. Pull out the phone, open up text messages, and you're going to text the word Canary to 877-740-3226. Get on the list. You'll get a little notification before we go live throughout the week. But the most fun part is, you know this. I know there's somebody out there who has heard me pitch the text message alert system maybe hundreds of times now. And, you know, they always thought, oh, I don't know, maybe, or I don't know, I don't really need more text messages coming. But every time I say it is someone's final straw. And that goes for a lot of what I say on the air when it comes to, I don't know, value for value or the text message list or the newsletter or whatever. I know it's annoying to hear it, and I try to not make it annoying, but it is what it is. But you got to remember, every single time I say it is somebody's final straw, and they whip out their phone, they join the text message alert system, and their life will never be the same. So if that's you out there, if you're hearing this, and you've heard me ask you to join the text message alert system before, and for some reason, maybe you had a good cheeseburger, maybe you're out in the hot sun, maybe something is happening with your kids and you just need someone to reach out to. If this is your final straw and you are texting the word Canary to 877-740-3226 to join up, let me know, because here's the fun part. Once you text Canary and you get the little welcome message, you can text me back at that number. I read all them. I love them. I respond to some on the air oftentimes. Keep in mind, I cannot text you back because that's not how the system works. It's there's like consumer protection stuff. It's very expensive for us to text you back. But just know, I read them oftentimes on the air. And keep an ear out for your area code, because people are finding out that there's Canarians in their area code by hearing me call them out. Like 562 says, this one I marked because this was good. 562 texted today and said, subscribe to Chili's rewards. Yes. It's a very funny joke. I get the joke. Thank you, 562. Being on this end of the text message alert system, it's kind of funny. You know, it's very simple. You just got to text the word Canary. Don't add anything. Don't take anything away. That gets you on the list. There's people texting all manner of things to try to convince the robots to sign them up for the list. And, you know, I like it. It's fun. It's creative. But the robots who are signing you up do not respond to your human silliness. 856 texts and says, I have a prayer meeting at church tonight. Hopefully I can pop into the clubhouse. Either way, have fun. Thank you very much, 856. Why don't you put me on the list at the prayer meeting, okay? Your best buddy Basil needs some prayer. Get the whole congregation going on that sucker. That would be nice. Just for all the reasons, for all the possible reasons you can think of. But also, of course, it's very sad. I have a pretty sore throat today. It has not yet affected my larynx, the voice thing. Not yet, at least as far as I can tell. But there's a very good chance that next week my voice will sound so rugged and cool. But thank you very much. 36. Oh, no. This is Sir Tristan. Sir Tristan says, please pray for my friend Chris. He just lost his first baby at just a couple weeks old. My heart breaks for him. Jeez Louise, Sir Tristan. Let's do this. Here, look what I have.
Producers, assemble!
That's right, Clubhouse. Let's start out with this. We're calling the Producers. We are on the value for value model, which means we're entirely produced by you in so many different ways. But the Producers, as opposed to the producers, they're the spiritual producers of the show, and anybody can do it. And if you just heard that jingle, you've now been activated in some sort of strange MK Ultra experiment. That is your trigger word, and now you are going to war. So we are putting on the list Chris, friend of Sir Tristan, who just lost his first baby, couple weeks old. That is unimaginable, absolutely unimaginable. So all of us, say a little prayer right now, put it on a list. We're praying for Chris, and just the most potent presence of God in their family for comfort and strength. And I mean, I don't even know what to tag that with. That just is that the Holy Spirit needs to lead on that entire thing. So thank you for letting us know, Tristan, and everybody right now, say a little prayer for Chris for everything. And 856, why don't you put that on the list for your prayer meeting at church tonight? His name's Chris. Okay. Thank you very much, Sir Tristan, for the text. 540 says, love the Ducks. Thank you very much. I also love the Ducks. Everybody loves the Ducks. In fact, let's feed the Ducks for a second while I read this text from 678. 678 says, love you, buddy. Have a good show. Thank you very much, 678. And if you're new to the show, this is Feeding the Ducks. It's our favorite jam. It is royalty-free. I was going to say tax-free. I suppose it's also tax-free. It's royalty-free, tax-free, stock streaming music that we use to either set the mood or also activate some weird Canary Cry MK Ultra, programming. I don't know. It's just a good song. So here we go. We're feeding the ducks. We're walking the ducks. We'll save the rest of that for later on. Okay. Well, you know what happens here, folks. You know how this goes. Goodness gracious, look at this. I think it's because I'm getting started way later today than usual. Minimal responses on the text message alert system. Minimal people coming in for the live show. Is this the new normal? Is this what podcasting in the dark is like? That's okay. Whoever's here, it's because you're meant to be here. We are going to be premiering the new Beyond the Verse, Jesus as the Veil. It's going to be very exciting. We're going to invite people to call in. And remember, this is a call-in show, so if nobody calls in, it's going to be a short show. And don't feel scared. Don't feel like you don't have nothing to talk about. Don't feel like you need to have any sort of on-brand, on-topic, smart question. This is really about the Canarians spending time together, fellowshipping more than anything. We're not trying to get some sort of hot take, although hot takes almost always result in the call-in. So if you're on Rumble, if you're on YouTube, if you look down in the description of this video, you'll see the call-in link right there at the top of the description. And copy paste that. It'll ask you a few questions. It'll put you right into the waiting room of this show. You'll see the back end. You'll be able to listen. You'll be able to watch. You can even send little private messages to me and the other people in the thing. And you can just hang out there and we'll make it work. Okay. Now that everybody knows how that works, let's get to it. I'm looking here. We've got, maybe I want to bring up, we'll do Beyond the Verse first. Let's do this. We're going to premiere this. We're going to chat about it. We'll see what comes up. I have not seen this. This is the 18th Beyond the Verse, which is pretty impressive, which means Gans has been creating these mini documentaries reliably, consistently for 18 weeks, which is a total win. That's how it starts, folks. If anybody out there has been wondering, what does it take to be a podcaster? It is just sheer force of will, consistency every single week. That's why in my enormous list of side projects and podcasts that have come and gone over the years, they usually stop at about 50 episodes. And I think that's the hardest part. Once you get to 50 episodes, it starts getting real hard because you've been doing it for a year consistently. And you look, nobody makes a ton of progress in a year. It's just the sad truth. And once somebody gets around 50 episodes, they're thinking, man, I've spent a whole year of my life doing this. So Gans is coming up on half a year of Beyond the Verse, which is very impressive. Let's jump in. We'll premiere this episode of Beyond the Verse, Jesus as the Veil, and I will see you guys on the other side. Here we go.
In the ancient tabernacle and temple of Israel, there was a curtain. Not just fabric, but a veil, a boundary, a divide between man and the most holy place. But what if the veil wasn't only a symbol of spiritual separation, but something much more profound? A dimensional membrane, a quantum veil between the unseen realm and the seen realm. Today we look beyond the verse into a mystery that stretches from Exodus to Revelation. The veil concealed God's glory and protected man from death in his presence. It was no mere decoration, it was a dimensional firewall. Exodus 26:31-33. You are to make a veil of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely spun linen with cherubim skillfully worked into it. Hang it with gold hooks on 4 posts of acacia wood overlaid with gold, standing on 4 silver bases. Hang the veil from the clasps and place the Ark of the Testimony behind the veil, so the veil will separate the holy place from the most holy place. But then, it's recorded in Matthew 27, verse 51, at that moment the veil of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth quaked and the rocks were split. This veil that separates the holy place from the most holy place was torn because Christ himself had become the breach in the veil. His flesh, torn, opened the way not just into a room, but into an entirely new reality. Hebrews 10:19-20. Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way opened for us through the veil of his body. Did you catch that? Through the veil of his body. Jesus was the veil, and when his body was broken, this quantum boundary that exists between realms was forever torn. Modern science tells us there may be higher dimensions beyond our perception. In quantum mechanics, particles can exist in multiple states in multiple places until observed. Some physicists speculate that our 3D world is a projection from a higher reality, what they call a holographic principle. What the Bible might describe as heaven, science might think is a higher dimensional manifold. And the veil? Not necessarily just fabric, but a field, a boundary, put in place for our own protection, but also only accessible through God's grace. Isaiah 64:1. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down, that the mountains would quake at your presence. At Jesus' baptism, Mark 1:10. As soon as Jesus came up out of the water, he saw the heavens breaking open and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. The Greek for breaking open is schizo, to tear violently. The veil was torn open for a brief moment, perhaps a foreshadowing of what he was to do next. The same veil appears in Revelation 6, verse 14. The skies receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from its place. Here in the final unveiling, the apocalypse, where mere metaphor and poetry collapses into the real world, and the skies literally recede like a scroll. Acts 7, verse 57 says, Look, Stephen said, I see heaven open and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. Even in death, the veil lifts up. The true throne room appears not above us, but through that torn veil. Hebrews 6, verse 19 through 20. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and steadfast. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where Jesus, our forerunner, has entered on our behalf. Behind this curtain, beyond the quantum veil, our Redeemer has gone before us. If you find this research helpful and interesting, get your news analysis and deconstruction from a biblical perspective twice a week on Canary Cry News Talk on YouTube, Rumble, and your favorite podcast player. And if you want further breakdown and discussion on this and other Beyond the Verse topics, tune in to Canary Cry Clubhouse, recorded live every Thursday.
Hey, that's us. Canary Cry Clubhouse every Thursday. Here we are. Look at that. Good pitch at the end. Guns very nicely done. Goodness gracious. I'm sitting here thinking, listening, enjoying, becoming smarter at every second that Gans has put together here. And there's something so almost universally applicable to the tearing of the veil. Of course, it would make sense. You've got the logos of the universe, Jesus, stepping in as a sort of eternal, forever, before and now entrance, access point, a change in relationship between man and God, represented by, something fairly violent, where before the Old Testament, the ancient Hebrews, they very specifically, I love hearing about how meticulous and specific the tabernacles, the temple, even the ark were constructed, and how specifically even just the recordings of that information is included. I think it's a very fascinating aspect to what God, wanted us to know about what was going on. And of course, there's endless, not interpretations, this is not the word I'm looking for, but endless ways from the physical for one to rebuild such a thing, as many have done in the past, but also a sort of more spiritual or inward representations when he comes to not just the veil, but the acacia and the gold inlays and the bells and things like this. It's very, what you're kind of reading is like an ancient spec sheet, like a technological spec sheet almost. When you get a new gadget, hopefully you bought it from an American company. You get a new gadget, it comes in, you open it up, you got the gadget, you're stoked. But then there's always like a little booklet. And in that booklet, maybe it's got some instructions, but maybe not. You don't need those. You know what you're doing. But also in there, there's like the spec sheet for the object. And it's usually a bunch of gobbledygook. I mean, it's very specific technical specifications and, voltage and wattage. And if it, has some sort of wireless aspect, you've got like FCC, wavelength, just a bunch of gobbledygook. And it's interesting because you kind of get similar spec sheets. If we are going to, if not think, at least talk about the tabernacles, the temple, the Ark of the Covenant as some sort of spiritual technology, not making the implication that, the Ark of the Covenant was some sort of Atlantean technological object or something, but just, humans, their technology is their thing. Arranging objects in a certain way to achieve a certain goal. And, it's so very specific and it's taken so very seriously. The spec sheets that were given for the tabernacles, the temple, the ark, even Noah's ark. You've got the Ark of the Covenant, which is very specific, but even Noah's ark, they give you exact specifications for what we're looking at there. And in this, there's the veil, and the veil is very interesting. It wasn't even metaphorically. It did not represent, it was the separation between most humans, 99.9999 to infinity humans in existence. Because remember, there's only a handful of high priests who are allowed to go back there. And as far as I can tell, only one was going at a time. So you think about, the entire human population at the time, which admittedly was probably quite small, but there was one guy who was allowed to go past the veil into the Holy of Holies. And of course, we know this fella had a very special, almost like a spacesuit. They give the specifications of what this guy had to wear. The various jingly jangle bells on his robes. They had to tie a rope around his waist. Because when he was entering the veil, going past that separation, the idea was there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to walk out. That the power, the presence that he was going to encounter in that not just like prohibited space, but also inaccessible. Not just inaccessible because of rules, but inaccessible because of the power of God that would be so present behind the veil. And he was the mediator, the intermediary between the rest of humanity and the creator of the universe. So this veil, again, they give you the specs. You got the specs. You need these specifications to give the details on how exactly this veil is protecting. The veil was almost to protect people than it was to, keep people out of the Holy of Holies. I mean, that's something, isn't it? That's something interesting. I mean, people say this about sin too, A secular person or someone who's maybe left the church or changed their mind about their whatever Christian upbringing or something. They have a big problem with sin. Sin is a very scary word to people. And it's funny because they'll say they don't believe in sin and sin isn't, a big deal. It's just made up rules for no reason. But then you bring up sin and they get incredibly uncomfortable or upset or whatever. So they simultaneously laugh and scoff at the idea that there are things that by natural law should be avoided by humanity, but are also simultaneously impossible to avoid. Let's say, I don't believe in that. That's nothing. That's stupid. And at the same time, they would be very defensive if you bring up sin in regards to something that they're doing. Anyways, that's getting a little off the point. But I was always sort of taught that sin, it wasn't sort of arbitrary rules to not offend God, or at least it wasn't just that. It wasn't sort of living up to some impossible standard to keep one in a perpetual state of failing, but that sins were good to know because they were bad. They're bad for us. They protect us. Avoiding sin is not just avoiding angering God or breaking a rule. It's a fence that protects us. And same with the veil. As the way I see it, the veil was protecting people from the immediate, all-powerful presence of the creator of the universe. And then at the very same time, the Bible puts it, at the exact same moment, where violence tore through the body of Christ on the cross, there was a violent tearing of the veil, and the separation was gone. And they had to happen at the same time, of course, we know. And it's easy to look at this sort of, metaphorically, like, oh, Jesus sort of metaphorically replaced the need for that separation between man and God. But what I love about Gonza's presentation here is like, no, that was the literal replacement and destruction of that separation, not only providing a new entry point to connection with God, which was through Jesus, but also a new layer of protection. I don't want to get too theologically racy here, but if the veil, in some way, or at least in part, was there to protect humanity from the unfathomable power of the presence of God, then Jesus was the new, of course, we know the new covenant, the new contract, the new spec sheet for how human beings would not just be immediately incinerated by the unimaginable cosmic damage that could come from direct contact with the creator of the universe. I think that's quite interesting. And I'll say, pretty thankful for that. And yeah, we get to a place, talk about spec sheet. You talk about humanity's ongoing, admittedly impressive journey to document and understand the very universe. Certainly with our ups and downs, our towers of Babel, our sort of hubristic thirst for control over the natural universe. It's a complicated thing. But getting into the very strange, and keep in mind, still absolutely theoretical area of quantum mechanics, this kind of stuff, getting closer and closer to figuring out what exactly is going on here, what exactly the nature of our relationship with reality is. And when I say closer and closer, let's be clear, it's very possible that we will never actually get the satisfying answers to what that is. Because you can keep getting closer and closer and closer. But if the distance you're trying to cover is infinity, it doesn't matter how close you get. You're not gonna get to the end. But we still got our feet moving. We're still going, figuring it out. And we are at this very strange point. I mean, talk about the veil. We think about, we talk about the veil falling from our eyes. I guess that's mostly scales falling from our eyes, but, lifting the veil. Understanding sort of what's going on in the mainstream media, the narrative crafting, the illusory reality that is sort of controlled by a sort of cabal of dark magicians and wizards around the world, crafting the perception of reality for everybody. You'd say, well, once you've seen past the veil, you understand exactly what's going on around here. Maybe your narrative or the narrative on the TV isn't the objective truth that it's presented to be, and we thought it was for so very long. But the veil was lifted. And much like the veil that separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of humanity, there's no putting that veil back together, baby. Once it's ripped, it is ripped. When I was younger, it was described to me that the veil was like as thick as a phone book. The one in the actual temple. Now, I don't know, or in the tabernacle. Now, I don't know anything about textile science. I don't know how you get a cloth as thick as a phone book without just combining a whole bunch of other cloth. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. But it's hard to sew something back together when it's as thick as a phone book. Just saying. So I wonder what you guys have to think about that. I'll bring some stuff up later if we need more stuff to talk about. We have this very interesting update in our ongoing interest in the revival of Christianity in the mainstream culture. It's coming from the Christian Post, of course, but we'll bust that out if we need to. But let's take a second. It's just a reminder. This is a call-in show, folks, which means you got to call in. Don't be afraid. Don't feel like you need to have some sort of expert opinion or mind-blowing question. It's just a time to connect, chill, and just see what God has in store. So just hit that call-in link that is in the description of the video you're watching now. It'll ask you a couple questions. You'll go in, you'll get put into a waiting room. You can watch and listen to the show while you're there. Then when the time comes, I'll bring you up. And we do have a winner for today for first caller, the bravest among them. And this is Bear. We got Bear. Okay, I'm going to bring Bear up on the stage in a second. This is Baranowicz. Baranowicz. Maybe that's it. We're going to call him Bear. I think this is one of our European fellas. Let's try this. Bear, I'm going to bring you up on the stage. Here we go. What's going on, buddy?
Hello, Basil. You all right?
I'm okay. I'm hanging in there, buddy. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. Is my audio okay? There's no issues?
No, you sound fine.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah, I saw you stream and figured I'd call in. I didn't know I'd be the first one. I'd like to say, though, that you brought up some very interesting points and discussions in your opening monologue. about the
Okay.
veil, about, you know, the dichotomy of sin,
Yeah.
the power structures, all very interesting, and you've articulated them really well.
Well, thank you very
So, is there
much.
anything you'd like to go over and chat about?
Well, I'm curious. You're in Europe, right? Forget exactly where you were.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah, just the UK.
You're over there in the UK. Good time, fun time. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think the Veil is especially interesting for a few reasons. One of them, I mean, the parallel between the veil of the tabernacle or the temple with Jesus as the veil is, there's a lot of important stuff, a lot of eternal sort of moments in scripture. But this is maybe one of the most important, maybe the most solid, maybe the most literal, because we're tempted to say something like, Jesus's death was as if the separation, or as if the veil tore, or he's some sort of metaphor for the veil tearing, which was not only uh, an exclusionary force, the veil was keeping out the less qualified from entering the Holy of Holies, but also, and I think more so, but I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about it, more so was there to protect human beings from what would emanate from the Holy of Holies, being some sort of unimaginable cosmic power. Um, and you have both the veil and the violence upon Christ happening at the exact same moment. I don't know. It just seems like one of those. It's like as I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Sort of, if you're going to make a list of top three most important events
Oh, like
in the
bullet points.
Bible, yeah, right. The tearing of the veil is right up there with the death and resurrection of Christ. And like I said, the whole concept of a veil is so applicable to so many sort of deep conversations we could have. And it's, kind of, it feels like the conversation about the veil could sit in this category of, talking about it sort of metaphorically, or what does it mean, or things like this. And it kind of blows my mind to realize that, like, oh no, this was like a one for one of the most important sentences in the Bible that represent, it is one and the same with the paradigm shift of Christ, you know, uh, uh, opening up an access point through him for human beings to God Himself, God the Father. And without the destruction of the veil, it's almost like that. It wouldn't be complete, I guess. Maybe the death and resurrection of Christ would almost be an incomplete story without the literal destruction of our previous spiritual technology that was the veil. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean there.
What does that make you think of?
Well, when it comes to the veil in particular, there are multiple sort of different aspects you could take away from it, or from a certain viewpoint, it could mean this, it could mean that.
Yeah,
With the veil itself, um, I would most possibly say that it is something that is transcendent. It's something we can conceive, but we cannot actually grasp.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and isn't that the like the core mystery of existing as a human being? Is like, what exactly is the separation between us and God, us and the sort of eternal highest version of reality that could possibly exist? I mean, we all constantly feel a separation from the eternal, feel an inherent, it's like we can almost feel it in our bodies, the fact that we are not present in the physical presence with God. and that veil, can have, could be applied either metaphorically or rhetorically to so much of what it's like being a human. Um, and you think about, like, okay, what exactly is it? Would it be like without, again, I keep going back to the, like, I think the veil was partially to protect people from the sort of, uh, what's the word? Environment of eternal, cosmic, unimaginable glory and power of God. Like, our bodies can't even, wouldn't even be, it's almost like being in space or like deep underwater. Our
Yeah.
bodies aren't even built for it anymore after the fall. It's
Yeah,
almost a
it's something we can't
piece of,
conceive, or we can't manifest ourselves. It's, as you said, imagine if all of a sudden you were just in space. It would
yeah.
just be so overbearing, so overcoming. You wouldn't have no idea what to do.
Yeah, I mean, even just like physics, even the physics of being in space, suddenly there's no gravity. Even if you had a spacesuit, let's say you had a spacesuit and you popped right into space, it would be so absolutely disorienting. Of course, this is a thought experiment, folks. If space exists, this would be an interesting thing. You pop into space in one moment, all the way down to, yeah, you're floating around, you're spinning around, there is no horizon, like your brain would just explode, not be able to comprehend what's going on. But even to the gravity, you're floating around, you're not feeling gravity, it's weightless. But like even your organs, each and every one of your organs would suddenly not be feeling gravity. You'd feel your organs like floating around. It would just be so unimaginably foreign of an environment to be in, that it's
Mm.
like, yeah, we do need some sort of mediation, some protection, to direct experience with that. And it apparently used to be a veil, and now it's Jesus, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, especially when you just look at the when Jesus went to the garden and he foresaw what man is, what man will be, and everything that man can do. And even
Yeah,
after witnessing all of that, he said, "No, humanity is still it's worthy of my redemption, worthy of my sacrifice."
right, right.
Which
Amen.
that again, that is another unconceivable concept. Imagine if I, was to plug something into your mind and say, "Here is every single sin that man could commit, will commit, and can commit,"
Right.
and I show it to you in the blink of an eye and go, "Well, what do you think?" It's
Yeah.
something that you just break. We couldn't conceive it.
Just immediately be like, yeah, just don't bother. Just don't bother with it.
Yeah,
you just these get, that's a lot. We don't need to mess with these human things. Let's just skip it, go on to whatever's next. Yeah. No, it's I like a good conversation where we just sit and go, "Oh man, this would be inconceivable, huh? Yep. Oh, this would be inconceivable, huh?" It's almost like it's like training for another environment as well. Just sitting, so often in conversation. I hope I don't get too heady here. You can
oh,
stop
no,
me
no, it's
whenever you
your
want.
stream. Like and it's really interesting to hear what you have to say. So
Oh,
please.
well, thanks. Well, yeah, we'll find it together. But just back, if I was going to take a step, get a little bit more specific, talking about environments that we might not be used to and would feel uncomfortable. As a podcaster, I certainly feel this way. But you can also feel this in those long, sort of aimless conversations with whoever, a loved one or something. Even to just sit in a conversation that there is no winning, there is no, points for making the best points. There's no real objective to it. That's kind of how I
Mm,
see a lot of this show. It's like I'm coming at it without an objective. Um, and with today's experience as being a human being, whether it's interacting online, interacting on the phone, pretty much every single time you are interacting with a human being, especially sort of verbally, there's some sort of goal, there's some sort of win, there's some sort of
yeah.
uh, direction that's sort of implied. And it can be uncomfortable to just kind of sit in a conversation that doesn't have a clear finish line or a clear winner or a clear something or other. And I kind of first experienced this with doing the Joyspiracy theory, where I'd sit and just chat with a listener or someone for like 3 hours with literally no goal. And I got nothing to get out of it, nothing to nowhere to land. And the times that I felt like I needed to, find some win, I feel were the times that I look back and think the most poorly of those conversations. Like, oh man, I was really reaching for something there. So, anyways, just another thing on the list of the finite experience of being a human coming
Oh
in
yeah, no, definitely. It's
contact coming in contact with an is sort of infinite power and possibility.
oh yeah, no, definitely.
How is it over there in the UK? Are you guys doing okay?
We're holding on. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I heard Keir Starmer came out the other day and kind of changed his tune on immigration. Did I hear that right?
He did change his tune, but you know, just because the bird can sing doesn't mean the bird can fly. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
it might be a case where he says this and he's going to make changes, and then in 4 years, when he's either voted back in or elected out of office, he'll go, okay, now I'm going to do it, or oh, I'm sorry, guys, I didn't have time to do it.
Yeah, it seems like a very convenient time for him to do that. I mean, it's taking an absolute 180 on what previously was like the most important thing to him, and suddenly aligning himself with the very obvious uh, preference of everyone over there. It seems a little too late, too little, too late, almost.
Oh yeah, no, it's a classic case of carpetbagging. He with the UK, we voted in the Labour Party. They lost a lot of popularity very quickly due to a series of events, and that's why he's done the 180 on these stances to potentially win back the votes and views of certain people. But it might work, it might not. For me, I don't. I won't change my view.
Yeah, well, I mean, how do you make up for all the stuff that he's stood for in the past? When's the next election? When is he up for vote?
Um, Definitely 4 years away.
Oh,
Because like America, we have 4-year votes. So, but
yeah,
yeah, he's only been in office, I think, about 8 months. So,
yeah,
yeah, 4 years.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, that was a very interesting. It was really just an interesting signal. Whether he's, I don't know, earnest about it, whether he really cares, whether he plans to do anything, or if it's all just illusion, whatever. It was an interesting signal that some reason, the reasonable thinking behind, uh, you know, uh, infinite immigration, or the reverse of that, whatever, kind of signaled to me that it was, as obvious, as powerful, or at least as politically beneficial, um, to come out and say something like that, which, I guess that counts for something. But that is when, it kind of reminds me of Carney,
Mm.
Carney in Canada. Like there's just some little shift he made at just the right moment, to snatch victory away from what that other guy Polyev or something, which really caught everybody by surprise. And again, it went against everything Carney had ever stood for before. Went against his previous book that he'd written. Went against everything.
Oh yeah,
So
that's a classic politician move. The most famous example is Hillary Clinton. She's
right,
flip-flopped on multiple points over the years where, she was against gay marriage, then she was for gay marriage, then she was against abortion, then she was for abortion, and that is simply what politicians do. They will try to appeal to what the mainstream view is or what the big vocal point is at the time, just
Yeah.
to get those people.
I remember the days where I thought it would be possible that somebody, some politician, certainly it exists somewhere, that a politician, wouldn't be just a complete illusion or some sort of character, to have some sort of something. But I have since changed my mind about that, and the veil has been lifted. I don't know if the veil can ever go back on that one.
No, especially for me as well, because I don't vote. I don't really support any like political party. I
Right,
have political views, but I don't support a particular party or a particular person
right.
just because you could vote someone in who says I'm going to do this to maybe they say, oh, I'm going to lower taxes, so if you vote me in I'll lower taxes. If they don't do that,
Never
y-
actually happens, right?
yeah, but also what can you do to you can't get them out of that seat of power. You
Yeah,
can't hold them responsible.
they're not
It's
held accountable. There's no enforcement arm or anything,
exactly, yeah. Once
right?
they've passed the vote on whatever they needed to do, there's nothing you can do really.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you, Bear. A pleasure to be in the presence of your beautiful accent again. Is there
Oh,
anything
thank you.
else? Anything else you want to chat about before we check in on the next caller?
um, no, I'll let you bring on the next caller. Before I go, I'd just like to say thank you for having me again. It's lovely speaking to you again, and hopefully do this again soon.
Absolutely. Can't wait to talk to you again, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. Take care, Basil.
Ta ta. Ta ta. Why did I say that? Oh my gosh. That is so. I'm sure that's offensive to somebody. Sorry I said ta ta, Bear. Um, by the way, I can already kind of feel my voice getting tired. So I meant to do this beforehand. I didn't do it, but just as a public service announcement, I am now activating the 10-minute timer. It is not a hard deadline, but it's just to keep us on track. And for those who are in the waiting room, you'll see that I have shared to those in the waiting room the secret zone for the callers. You can see the timer there, so we can both kind of keep an eye on it. Again, don't stress too much about it, but just keep us on track here. Next up, we got Sir David G in the waiting room. I believe Sir David G meant to go, was trying to call last time. It didn't make it, so let's do this. Let's bring Sir David G on the stage. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Basil.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, what's on
Yeah,
your mind?
well, I tried a minute ago. It seems like when I try to do it on my phone over Wi-Fi, it just goes haywire, and I don't know why.
I see. But I seem to have figured it out now. The connection seems solid.
Yeah, I switched over to my laptop.
Smart man,
So,
smart
yeah.
man. Sometimes you just need the big device.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see how
So
it
what's
goes
on
on
your
the
mind
Wi-Fi.
today?
Well, the Veil stuff, I mean, it's interesting, Jesus being the veil, right? He kind of protects us from the full power, right? The
Mm-hmm.
all-encompassing power of God. But what came to my mind was veil also being um, a covering, because I guess for me, COVID was the big reveal, right? The final. There had been inklings for me of something's amiss. I was very untrusting of government and all of that, but the veil was kind of finally lifted for me during that time to see the full scope of everything that was going on. And I got to tell you, man, it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, like it put me into it just sent me down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole, just uncovering everything. And, it really put me into a very negative state, just feeling the weight of it all and it's all just feeling a bit hopeless.
Heavy, bro.
Yeah. And it was almost like that the not knowing was the veil, the covering that was protecting me from, or even all of us, who are still behind that veil, from that just that heavy, just consuming feeling
Yeah,
of you are nothing, everything is beyond your control, and I don't
dude,
know, that's just kind of what came
totally.
to my mind.
I mean, that's the thing. That's what makes it so hard for people. I have a buddy. I've talked to my buddy, but I've talked about my buddy before here, and I've known this guy literally my entire life. And I would say he's my best friend, but it's like it's even. I mean, he's basically a brother, um, and he knows what I know. He knows what I do. He knows what's going on. But he himself has absolutely no interest in like getting to the getting to the bottom of anything, you know. And what I respect about him and why I don't push him, why I don't make it a thing, A is because we got a lot of other things to bond over, and B is he knows it. He's just like, when it comes to politics, when it comes to world events, when it comes to all this stuff. I mean, 9/11 was a great example, talking to him about 9/11. But he was just like, it's just too much for me. I kind of just gotta put my head down and I just gotta make it through the day. I'm like, yeah, man, I totally get it. I totally get it. And when I encounter someone, and we've all encountered these people who are so on a war path to defend the the illusion that we've been given, and I get a little bit of grace in my heart, even if they annoy me, even if they offend me, even if I feel sorry for them, even if they make me, it just blows my mind sometimes how vociferously people will defend an obviously illusory reality, whether it's just coming from the mainstream news or whatever it is. But they're at my best. I do have grace for them as a person, maybe not for their personality or something, but just as a person who realizes that if they let the veil be lifted, that it would be just too much. That, everything would come into question. Their entire life, their entire, belief about the world, their trust in authority, everything would just be snatched away. And it's like a defense mechanism to defend that as best as you possibly can, because it's existential, honestly.
Hmm.
It's like an existential threat. And people go into like animal fight or flight mode. If I let this idea take hold, if I, let this go unyelled at, like I might die. Like it almost
Yeah.
has, maybe if not a literal death, like just a loss of all sense of reality. And so, sometimes when people are so hooked in like that, I'm just like, it's the Lord's job at that point. It's not my job.
Exactly. What else can you do? And
What?
I personally feel that even with that type of thing, being on one side of the veil versus the other is that there's still some kind of inner knowing. Just like I think, everybody has some inner knowing that God is real, that there is a creator, right?
Yeah, right.
But accepting that truth comes with a lot of sacrifice, right? Because you have to give up all of your sin, all the pleasure. Not, all, I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I'm
You have
trying
to
to say,
die. Yeah, you have to die for
right?
yourself. Die to
Right.
yourself. I mean, it is existential. Everything you thought about yourself and everything has to die if that's the case, and that's
E-
scary.
exactly. And to come to that conclusion, because there's a guy I work with, and we have a lot of these conversations, and that's kind of what I have been telling him. He's like, well, if everybody knows that there is a God, well, why don't they want to accept it or believe it? It's very simple, because you'll have to be held accountable for what you're
Yeah,
doing. Me being the prime suspect, right? Like I'm not
totally.
any kind of perfect in any way, shape, or form, but I think that the lifting of the veil, I think people at the same time, there's an inner knowing somewhere, like you can't touch it. Where does it exist? I don't know, but it's there. And I think there's an understanding that the second you allow, or even peek, like the Wizard of Oz, right? When the great Oz is revealed, right? The man behind the curtain. It's like,
Yeah.
once you peek behind that curtain, like it can't be unseen, right? And
Yeah.
I think
Right.
it's kind of the same thing, that as long as you accept all of that, the mainstream, everything that you're taught, everything that you're told, and just believe in all of that, that there is community in a sense of, feeling accepted and supported. But once you step through that veil, or once that veil is lifted, like that's it. You're kind of flying solo for a while, trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And
Y-
I think that's just why a lot of people are hesitant to it, because there's an inner knowing there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's another great parallel with uh, Christ on the cross and the veil tearing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they had gone generations, generations, generations of the Hebrew people who kept the veil up and built their society around this force field that was protecting them. And they had their guy who'd go in there, but thank God we've got this veil because, they literally would wrap a rope around the guy and bells on his robe because he could die just being in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of a, better that guy than me type of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
this comfort, this protection, again, and it goes to tradition, it goes to culture, it goes, that veil was an existential protection. And it's so powerful that the veil tears at the same time, the exact same moment that Christ dies on the cross. Because again, it wasn't that there was an immediate, like, no access to God. And it goes both ways, but we're talking about the protection part of it. It's not that there was no mediator. You tear the veil without Christ dying at that moment, who knows what would have happened? The whole world may have blown up or something, or everybody,
Right.
Ark of the, Indiana Jones style, everybody melts at the power of, the creative power of the eternal God, something like there had to be a replacement. There had to be the new paradigm, the new covenant. It wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
whoops, 1 second. Sorry. There wasn't, oh gosh, that's so loud. Can you hear that? Does that go
No.
out on the, okay, good. Um, there wasn't no veil, it was just replaced by something new, better, the next, it was a paradigm shift of all reality. And that's kind of how it is when the veil tears and you see that the world is not what you've always thought it to be. God help you if you don't have, Christ dying for you at that moment, because then you're just in direct, experience with the existential disaster that is all of reality has been made up for you. And if you don't have, and in our case, Christ literally on the cross there for us to mediate with God, to mediate with objective reality, that's scary. That's just you, again, floating back out into space with nothing to do. Which is why I think when it comes to, I'll just use the colloquial term, conspiracy theorists, and it comes to the fringe people, we're seeing, especially now more than ever, and it used to be early, in my career, the faith and the waking up to the reality of what's going on were hand in hand, and they had to.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go hand in hand, because without Christ, there was no meaning beyond the veil. Like there was nothing. You might as well keep the veil up if you don't have Christ. There's no
Right.
benefit to it. But what we're seeing now is just the huge revival, and not just of, skeptics, but also of Christianity at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like a coincidence. It feels like literally Christ is the only stable thing that exists once you wake up to your previous God, the establishment, the government, the blah, 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 whatever. Once that veil tears and you see that that's not what it is, if you don't have Christ on the cross for you, and of course resurrecting afterwards, uh, it's just impossible.
Yeah, what
I
is
don't
there?
it's just absolutely impossible. And I think that's why we're seeing today, even those who would have been considered a conspiracy theorist or whatever for the past 10 years, take Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, a classic secular, again, I hate using the term conspiracy theorist, but I'll just use it because we all know what it means. Um, Classic secular conspiracy theorist guy. Even he is going to church now. Even
Is he
he's.
really?
Yes, that was the news story that
No
we weren't
way.
able to get to. Yeah, I'll bring it up here just
It was
because we.
probably Eddie Bravo because
Let's.
he had Paul Stobbs from Understanding Conspiracy. They did a whole interview on Eddie Bravo's channel, and Paul Stobbs kind of laid out the little season theory to him.
Yeah, the little
And
season thing is crazy. It's
bro,
everywhere. Yeah,
I'm there.
I know.
We
There's a
won't get into it now because, bro,
no,
I could
yeah.
go on forever.
But here's this. This is from ChristianPost.com.
What?
Joe Rogan is attending church consistently. Christian apologist Wes Huff reveals. Now,
I
Wes
wonder if
Huff
he
is.
goes with Adam Curry.
I would be very interested here. I think
Yeah,
Adam's a little bit out of Fredericksburg is a little far from Austin, but I'm sure they've been together. Yeah, Joe
yeah.
Rogan, the nation's most prominent podcaster and frequent commentator on life's biggest questions, is consistently, quote, attending church. Christian apologist Wesley Huff has revealed, quote, I can tell you for a fact that he is attending a church and that he has been a consistent thing. Huff, who is the Central Canada Director of Apologetics for Canada, said during a recent appearance on some other podcast.
Wow.
So, this is a great example of Joe Rogan's a guy where, in a way, let's say metaphorically, the veil had been torn for him and it's unsustainable without
hmm
Christ.
It
You know,
really is. Yeah.
yeah, it's really amazing, and we're seeing all these, trends and stuff that we've been pointing out in the past couple of years, and I'm pretty. I mean, 2012, we were saying it, like thank God we're Christians, thank God we have Jesus, because all this stuff would be too crazy, and now we're seeing it happen on a population level. It's crazy.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean that honestly, that's been the only thing. Um, well, I'm gonna say but Jesus has been the only thing. Whereas in the past, I would, you know, just get so sad and depressed, and I mean, I hate to say it in such a public way, but kill myself. You
Right.
know, literally
Yeah.
be at that point. But recently, after going through everything I went through, and it's just in the middle of COVID, and then after it all kind of playing itself out, and then just really seeing the truth of reality opened up in front of me. Jesus was the only thing that I had. I mean, literally the only thing that I had to keep me grounded. The rope tied around my waist, if you will,
Yeah.
um, just to yank me back to next to his side, and just he like, hey, I got this. It's
Yeah.
like don't get lost in there. You know.
Amen.
So
Amen.
anyway, I won't keep going on and on, man. And I'm sure you have other people, but I just wanted to
No,
call and
yeah, no worries. That was thank you for calling. And yeah, man. No, I think you're right. It's again, that's why I feel myself getting so kind of fixated, thanks to Gons, of course, for making the thing about it, but fixated on looking at this veil tearing moment at the
hmm
exact same time as the death of Christ. Like, as important as the death of Christ was, I think it is as important, of the moment of the veil tearing. Like, how do we not refer to that all the time, like as
Mhm.
often as we refer to Christ on the cross, refer to tearing of the veil, and then to see it again, like we've gone over now, on this crazy population level in a way that I just really never imagined. It's blown my mind. Thank you so much, dude, for calling in, sticking with it.
Yeah,
Sir
for
David
sure.
G, really appreciate you, buddy.
Well, thanks, man. And just a reminder to everybody this Saturday, it's going down 1 p.m.
Houston,
Battlegrounds Axe
Texas.
Throwing, Houston, Texas, 1 p.m. And we might even, KSBJ is the local Christian radio station here in Houston, and they're having they're calling it Fajita Fest at Clark Henry
What?
Park in Jersey Village, from 12 to 5. And the Newsboys are going to be there. I don't know if you're familiar with those
What,
guys.
bro?
Yeah.
What? Of course.
Yeah. It's free, free event, live music. Me and a buddy, we're trying to make it after the meetup to go see if, I'm sure they would be the headliner, right? Towards the end. So I don't know. We're going to try,
Yeah, they'd have to be.
so if you can't make it to the meetup, at least come meet us there, Clark Henry
Dude,
Park.
CanaryCryMeetups.com, folks. If you are within striking distance of Houston, Texas, please go to the Canary Cry Meetup at Battle Axe Throwing. It's this Saturday. You go to CanaryCryMeetups.com. You got all the information there. Send Sir David an email. What is it? David G. No 33 at protonmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope the Texan Canarians make an effort and get out there, buddy, because that sounds like a blast.
Well, we've got a good turnout. I've got a certain amount reserved, but I'm sure, if people did want to show up, we could still make
Just
something
show
work.
up.
But if
Show
not, even
up,
if not, come to that Fajita Fest thing. If you can't make it to the meetup itself, and I'll be walking around in my Canary Cry News Talk T-shirt, so won't be hard to spot.
Perfect. Okay, I'm glad to hear you got some people lining up to come hang with you. That's
Yeah,
really
it's not just gonna be me. Okay,
yeah, good.
It's gonna be good.
All right, thank you so much, buddy.
Well, thanks,
Have a
Basil.
great time at the meetup, and can't wait to hear about it.
All right, great. Have a good one. God bless.
Bye. God bless. Bye.
Bye.
Fun. Love it. All right. Oh gosh, folks, you can start to hear the voice give out. So I'm going to make sure, oh boy, I'm going to make sure that the callers are able to see this timer. For some reason, the timer went away. So I'm going to go like this. Again, not a big deal. It's not a hard deadline, but it might become a hard deadline if my voice goes away. So here we go. All right, we got Sir Psalm 40 on the stage, buddy. What's up? Uh-oh, you're muted. Excuse me while I drink some water.
I'm here.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Noah. So
what's going on? What's on your mind?
I noticed the baby talking about, I guess, dealing with struggles, basically. I know, obviously we all have our struggles, but I'm reminded of.
Real quick, buddy. Sorry to interrupt. Are you in the bathroom or something? I'm
in a garage.
Okay.
But I am on my way out.
Okay, great. Sounds good. We can hear you. It's just sounds a little echoey.
Okay, here we go. So Job, of course, everybody goes to Job. That's the recommendation for how to deal with struggles. I don't know if this is common knowledge. It was new to me, but when you think of the story of Job, everybody knows that there were 3 friends that came to visit him and mourn with him. But there's a part near the end where there's a 4th guy that pops up. Are you familiar with this?
In the story of Job.
Yeah, there's Job going through all his troubles, and then when he's got the sores on his body and his wife tells him to just curse God and die, he says, you don't know what you're saying. and he just starts to mourn and call out to God. And I don't think it explicitly says it, but I would assume he was probably fasting and praying and leaning more into God, is what he decided to do. And then that's when his three friends show up. Well, they all have their parts to say about, why this is happening to him and what he should do. All the wise men are counseling and all this for like 40 chapters. And then at the end, God comes into the conversation. But before that, there's another young kid. I can't remember the guy's name. I don't remember any of the friends' names, honestly.
Yeah, I
But
was trying to remember. I can't.
right, there's um there's a younger man that ends up coming around, and he actually has sense in him. And once he starts saying the right stuff, that's when God enters the conversation. But the
Mm,
point I'm trying to make is that kind of like the way that I think we should, you know, evangelize just by being lights, like
mm-hmm.
not even necessarily going up to people, but just doing your own thing with God and for God, and fruit will be produced from that alone, and people will see the fruit. So
Yeah.
in that, this young kid that probably had no place in the middle of this, philosophical counseling that was going on, he ended up, being the one to be blessed because he witnessed it and he saw the perseverance and the faith. And I think that we should be remembered and like encouraged to know
Yeah.
that by overcoming our struggles, we're not just it's more than just a win for us. Like who knows who's watching or who's hearing or who's
Yeah.
being blessed.
Yeah.
So
Amen. Yeah. Yeah. It kind of reminds me back to kind of what the Lord was saying at the beginning of this year about endurance and enduring. And I guess that goes all the way back to our conversation with Donnie Discerned. And it's, just so strongly have, we want so badly to have a pretty firm instructional for what to do at this point in history. And the thing that just keeps coming up is just like, just endure, like this holiness that comes from endurance. This, and with endurance, of course, is not just sitting and doing nothing, but is this overcoming in our own special way, to our own special obstacles, our own, uh, you know, it might be relatable to someone and you can empathize and share on specifics, but then, in the end, our struggles really do just comes directly back down to our own experience. And to be able to endure these things, I mean, you must have God with you. Like making it through ourselves is just not an option. But of course, with God, we're able to endure things in ways that we could never imagine. And you're right, watching someone make it through something that seems unendurable is really an incredible thing. I mean, I've of course have had my own struggles in recent years and continue to have my own. And goodness gracious, if it weren't for the people that I have around me, even not going through the same stuff, or maybe they are similar or whatever, but the faith that comes from simply somebody else living their life and enduring their struggles well, that's like priceless. And we can have access to these people and these stories online, and that's certainly worth something. But boy, oh boy, I look around and see family members and friends and people I'm close to make it through. Just unimaginable stuff. And really, when I get down on myself, it's the testimony of others that is just undeniable. I see we have Psalm 40 dropped out again, so we'll keep an eye out for him to get back on the line. He had a couple more minutes in his timer there. We'll see if he pops back in. Boy, oh boy, my voice was doing great. Then at the last second, okay, there's Psalm 40. I'm going to bring him back on stage so we can finish that out. Sorry about that, Psalm 40. You're back.
No, I don't know if it was my fault or what. I think it is my fault, actually.
Hmm.
Weather's been kind of crazy out my way for a while.
It's the CMEs, the solar flares, buddy. They're coming.
Something, man. It's something for sure. Them drones must have dropped something off when they were hanging out over here. All right. I wanna use a maximum. I wanna take the maximum opportunity of this time that I have here.
Okay.
You said earlier something about you're surprised that when we think about the crucifixion or the resurrection, the crucifixion, the gospel story, the passion story specifically, like the veil. You're right. Like it's not really a key point in most cases. Another big part of that whole scene that is always overlooked is all the dead that were raised.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that?
Okay.
Isn't that kind of a
Yeah.
big deal?
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, everybody has apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. How is that not a like told every time like the gospel message is told? How is that not included every single time? Yeah, that's funny.
It kind of reminds me of like in Genesis, when God's making everything, it says that God made a great light and named it the sun, and a lesser light and named it the moon, and also the stars.
Right.
So, like, Christ was hung and he rose, and also a bunch of other people rose.
And we really don't hear a whole lot more detail on that either, do we?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's a great point. I'm going to start having to add all those things every time given the gospel message. Who knows? Maybe we'll test the algos.
Also, you were talking about the issue with dying to ourself and battling the flesh and stuff like that. And it's kind of like a thought I've been working on, but I guess I'm comfortable enough to say that it's my opinion that it's not actually you. It's the defective flesh that is enslaving you and deceiving you. We do deceive ourselves. We are deceived by outside forces, but we do also deceive ourselves. And the
Yeah.
heart is like naturally wicked, and no one can know it. It's like a mystery. The ridiculous wickedness that the heart just naturally is.
Yeah.
So, we shouldn't be beating ourselves up because we can't get right. Paul, great Apostle Paul, as he's writing the Bible, could not get right. He wrote to the Romans that he does things he doesn't want to do. And what he wants to do, he can't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The point is the will. If you're desiring to do these things and you're trying, you're going to fail. But the point is your desires. Because where your desires are, that's the fruit that's going to come. Like your desire is what grows your fruit. There's another part in the New Testament where it says something about desires give birth to sin, and then sin, when it's fully conceived, brings forth death. But it begins with desires. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you desire to give into your flesh, or do you hate what you do?
Right. Yeah. No, that's
And
incredible. That's a very important part of it.
yeah, and then there was also, you were talking about I don't know why I wrote this down, but I wrote doubting Thomas down. I guess just a fun fact that supposedly, according to the like stories of the apostles and saints and when they got sent to spread the gospel, Thomas, we know, needed the most to believe that Christ was standing in front of him. He required the most to believe.
Right.
So the story is, I don't know the validity of it, but that Thomas was sent the furthest
Oh,
when they went and did the Gospels. So, you know, he needed the most. So then Christ required the most from him in return. And, you know,
oh,
so we can, you know, wrestle with God for as long as we want, but he's going to break you at the end, you know, whether you believe or not. Like Jacob, you can wrestle this as long as you want, but whether, you know, you decide to give in now, like a child, or, you know, be arrogant and stiff necked and say, okay, well, you've answered 9 of my 10 questions, but you haven't answered all 10. So I'm not ready to fully, you know, dedicate my life yet because of this
right.
1 out of 10 question that I don't understand. Not even that I'm not getting answers for it, I just don't get it. And because I
Yeah.
don't get it, I'm not going to believe.
Yeah, yeah, you kind of, yes, the more you are sort of requiring of God, the the further he'll send you when he gets you. Yeah, I was just looking around here. I thought this and I just checked it, and this is at least the information available. I mean, Thomas got sent all the way to the south of India, which for a guy in sandals to go from is to, from Jerusalem to the south of India. Yeah, that's quite a walk. It's
That's
a bit of a jog.
that's those sandals they had in the Exodus.
Yeah, right, right. Oh man, but Psalm 40. Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate the way that you come in on this call and just have apparently a very important list of just mind blowing, hard hitting things to share. I appreciate that very much, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. And there's a final verse that I'd like to share. Anybody struggling with getting it or struggling with the battles that you're going through, no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man even imagined what God has prepared for those who love him. So you don't know, and you won't know what God has prepared for you. But if you love him, he has something for you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate you calling in, and I can't wait to talk to you next time.
All right, God bless. I'll see you.
God bless. Psalm 40, always bringing the heat, baby. Thank you, buddy. Oh, Sir Psalm 40, by the way. Night of the Canary Cry Roundtable of Knights and Dames. All right, we're going to jump right into this next caller. I'm going to see if I can reset this timer without blasting my eardrums. There it is. Next up, we got Be More Busker. That's the wrong thing. Here you go. There he is. What's up, buddy?
Hello, former busker. I mean, fellow busker. How you doing?
I'm doing
I'm a
good,
former
buddy.
busker. Sorry, I'm the former busker. You're the fellow busker.
The full, once a busker, always a busker, buddy.
I know, man. Like, if I have to do it online, then I have to do that. But, like, Baltimore has gone down the tubes in the past
Did
5
you
years.
Did you do any of that online busking back in quarantine or anything?
Yeah, I mean, that's all I could do. I mean, like, but this laptop cannot pick up occasion accordion too well. It's too
Ah,
very loud.
yeah.
Like, imagine like 4 reads at once for 1 note, and you got 20 notes, right? But
Dynamic.
they're like repeating notes. That's just whatever. But yeah, it doesn't work too well with a laptop. But
Sorry, accordion fans out there. You got to see it live.
I play Cajun box. Like, see, Cajun is different than like European. It's very hard hitting and wild. That's why I like Cajun accordion. It's much like the punk rock days that I remember from the 90s.
Woo!
Like kind of like that. I mean, sort of.
I kind of feel like my voice is going to start sounding like an accordion on this episode here, so that's pretty
Yeah.
fun.
Well, are you feeling all right, man?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I woke up with a little bit of a sore throat. Well, I went to bed with a little bit of a sore throat. And so I woke up, gargled some salt, thinking, it's gone. This isn't happening. It's not happening. Then woke up this morning, and you sleep however many hours with a sore throat, and your mouth just gets all weird and dry.
Well, hey,
And
don't explain it anymore because it sounds worse and worse as you explain it. Like gargle with more salt, dude. Like, I'm not gonna keep you talking, but thanks for having me up, dude. I appreciate that.
Hey, buddy, it's great to hear from you, pal. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, get some rest, brother.
I'll try. I'll try.
All right.
All right. Bye. Oh, what a nice thing to do. Yeah, the good part is it kind of feels like this is a good opportunity actually because, I do set a little timer for these things to keep it going, but then it's kind of not fair cuz you get me on some sort of rant responding to something heavy. The caller said, I can very easily eat up like 4 minutes of the 10 minutes. So it's probably good to rest my voice because I want to hear more from the callers. We got one more caller sitting in the waiting room here. This is Steve Z. Steve Z, you're on stage. What's up?
Hello.
How are you?
You can hear me. Cool.
Yeah.
Good. How are you?
Hanging in there, bud. What's on your mind today?
Well, first off, I just want to say I love you guys. I appreciate your guys' authenticity. You guys are always trustworthy. It's just nice to have it's nice to have you guys as like someone I can always come to, even though I'm just listening, but that I can, believe in. And I think like authenticity is always like hard to find these days because
Wow.
there's no like Christianese talk with you guys. It just feels like you guys are talking to us like we're a real person.
Well, we tried. Thank you for saying that, buddy. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Of course. I don't know if you saw it. But I just saw this new interview, and I apologize. I hopped on late to all this, so I haven't watched Jesus on the Veil, and I haven't been chiming in a ton.
No worries.
I've been working, but Jeremy Corbell and the other guy, I can't remember his name, but they interviewed this new whistleblower. It was pretty interesting. It was like part 3 of like this interview.
The UFO guys.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think his name was like Michael Brown was the guy they were interviewing.
Okay.
And super fascinating. And towards the end, the last 10 minutes were super good. So towards the end, he was like, they asked him like kind of like what is your prediction? Like what's like big picture, like what's going on type of deal. And he said something along the lines of like, we're in the Matrix. We're in like God's dream, or like we're in a dream.
Right.
It's like Matrix, but it's a lot more boring. And then at the very end, he's like, God is real. And obviously didn't go too deep into that, but it was cool to hear like a whistleblower say that first off. Yeah. And then it got me thinking more about like, I would love to know what you think about like, quote unquote, the Matrix, like I have my own ideas, but I've heard you guys mention it too here and there, like the Matrix. Right. But how does that align with you and like a Christian world perspective?
Yeah, I'll speak for myself. I'll talk about a lot of things that I haven't necessarily integrated into like an absolute theory of reality.
Right.
But it's really hard at this point for me to not see some very interesting things going on that support something like simulation theory or the Matrix, like you say. I think that there's biblical precedent to the idea of what we are experiencing is not absolute reality, even just by the fact that our eyes lie to us, all of our senses lie to us, even our own heart lies to us. So just because we are perceiving a reality fundamentally biblically does not mean that that is sort of the objective reality. Uh, and yeah, I mean, personal experiences make simulation theory extremely compelling. And I often will when I refer to simulation theory, I'll also refer to mind of God theory. It's the mind of God simulation, which is not that there's aliens or other humans that have put us in a simulation and are harvesting us or whatever, but that, God created everything, and he created it with his voice, and God is this unimaginable. I mean, not only is he an unimaginable, like, vast cosmic personal being, um, but he's also the very fabric that allows being to be. Nothing can be without God. And you can talk about this in all sorts of various ways. They talk about what are some of the phrases that a lot of the early Christians would say? Ground of being, the. So, long story short, everything exists not just as a result of God creating it, but God's very nature is what allows being to exist. And the mind of God simulation theory, it sounds very similar to what your interview fella mentioned, which is, it gets a little wonky to talk about because we say, this is all happening in the mind of God, and so we think of it kind of like he's having a daydream or he's imagining something. And when we think of imagination, we think it happening inside of a human brain, like there's an organ, and there's just like electrical synapses firing, and that's what dreams are. The very language we use to understand what dreams are makes this an insufficient way to describe it.
Sure.
But there is nothing without God willing it to exist. And we can think about it in a way of like, okay, well, where does will exist? Where does our will exist? And again, the best we can do is say in our brain or in our spirit, whatever that might be consisting of. And so I don't think it's too heretical to say that everything that exists is because of the imagination and the will of God. And the imagination and will of God probably is not in a physical brain, probably is not in, whatever. It's in this unknowable sort of cosmic form that we can't really imagine. I mean, trying to get into like quantum physics and stuff really seems to be trying to describe where the mind and will of God is. I went off about it recently regarding oh no, this wasn't on this show. So I was on Millennial Mustard Seed recently. It actually might be coming out today. So go check out Millennial Mustard Seed with Rod. They let me go off on that show. So what I did go into was, this thing where, actually, dang, dude, your question really fits in with that episode. I'll need to make sure that I'll post that episode when they send it to me.
Yeah, please do.
I go off on like basically this, but they give me like 35 minutes to do it. So, let's see here. Simulation theory, mind of God. Oh, yeah. So, as best as we can tell from our science, what we have access to, for better or for worse, whether it's true or whatever, this is just what we have to work with. Everything's made of atoms. And what are atoms made of? basically empty space. Atoms are 99.9 basically to infinity empty space. And we go, okay, well, you stack up these atoms to make an object. Well, these atoms don't even really touch each other. And considering that they're empty space, why is empty space not just merging with other empty space? You know, you have two, let's just say I could hold two clouds in my hand. If I smoosh them together, they'll just integrate into one cloud. So why does reality as we know it not just collapse, and why can I even sit in a chair and not fall through the chair? This kind of stuff. Well, and they'll say, well, it's because of the atomic force. There is a force going on in the empty space of an atom that won't allow these atoms to overlap one another. Okay, well, what is that force? They say, we don't know. We don't know what it is. We don't know what form it takes. We don't know what it is. So it's basically just like just code. You know, you can think of it like computer code. We don't know what it is or how or why. The physicality of it doesn't make any sense. We just know the result is atoms cannot smoosh into each other. So that's when we touch our skin, when we touch a chair. We're not actually touching those things. We're empty space bumping up against empty space with some unexplainable force not allowing them to smoosh into each other. Smoosh, a technical term. And so, you know, it's just a rule. It's like a rule with no explanation.
Right.
And that kind of, to me, feels like God's will. It's God's will that empty space cannot smoosh into other empty space. And so you take the most we can know, what we claim to know, what science claims to have figured out. Who knows if it's true or not? That's just what we get to work out with. It really just gets down to, why does anything? Well, because God wants it that way. We have no explanation. It's just, it is because it is. And to me, all of existence existing in the mind or the will or the imagination of God doesn't mean it's not real. In fact, by definition, it is real. It is the most real it could possibly be if it's happening in the will, the imagination, or the mind of God. Right. So I think, you know, theologically, that's the closest I would get to like really holding a firm belief about the Matrix or something. But then on top of that, you know, we know that God has supreme sovereignty over anything. It doesn't solve a whole lot of the moral questions about like why God would let things be a certain way and not other way. But I'm comfortable kind of sitting in a little bit of the mystery of that right now. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean, to another level, as you explained.
Yeah.
Much more of a trippy.
I know. It's
experience, sure.
It's hard to talk about sometimes, but that's the best I could do.
No, that's awesome.
What do you think? You think we're in a simulation?
I mean, in the way that you just explained it, it's not. I don't think it's insane to think that could be the possibility of what we're in. Yeah. I mean, it always blows my mind. I mean, this is a fairly new, like, opened my mind about Christianity, but just like the idea that how, like you were saying, like how little we know, and also just like not only know, but how little we can like see if you like believe in like veil being like over our eyes, you know, like it's crazy to like ponder and think about in a deep way. You know?
Bro, what always gets me, excuse me, is color. Like we look out, we see the material world. One of the first things we notice about anything is the color, right? But color doesn't actually exist. There's nothing that is actual color. If, you know, it's our eyeballs and our brain who are just taking in a wavelength of light and that wavelength of light is getting interpreted as a color. So sometimes I'll try to imagine, like, okay, what if my brain wasn't converting this wavelength of light into a color? What would the world look like? Absolute madness. Like, it would just look like static. Everything was
Right.
just like full static all the time.
Yeah, it's insane to think about.
And that's what I'm like, oh yeah, well, God's really smart and figured out that, color doesn't exist. Honestly, color is a gift.
Totally.
Color, the very concept of a color is like a gift from God, giving us the software to be able to interpret absolute nothing chaos of
Right.
wavelengths of light into a comprehensive, like,
Totally.
experience of this simulation he's given us. It's very
Right.
fun.
Yeah, it's probably like a glimpse of what really reality could be,
Yeah,
maybe.
and who knows after that?
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you calling in, buddy, and getting deep with me. Thanks for the opportunity to prattle on about the simulation theory and how it can mesh with Christians earnestly trying to figure out what's going on. Was there anything else you wanted to mention before we check in with the next caller?
I got a ton of questions written down, but I'll save it for next call. How about that?
Hey, please call in again, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Yeehaw. Yeehaw. Okay, let's see here. All right, we're coming up on 2 hours here, so that's pretty good. We're getting there. We got a couple more callers in the chat, and thank goodness they are callers who know what's going on. So I'm going to invite to the stage our Russian handler. How are you, Russian handler?
I'm good, good.
It's great to hear your voice again. How you doing?
Um, I'm doing all right. Well,
Okay.
I would say so.
Well, that's better
Yeah,
than the alternative, I suppose.
of course. No,
What's on your
God is.
mind today?
Um, I hear myself echo in there.
Oh, really? Oh, let
Yeah,
me see if I can do something about that. Sorry.
no, that's
Okay.
okay. The whole idea of our world here being a projection of something in heaven reminded me of C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia, The Final Battle,
Oh,
where
yeah.
they get to heaven and there's England, there's Narnia over there, and there's this place and that place, and it's all lined up. Um, I'm not really going anywhere with it. I just
No, no,
had this image pop in my mind, and you do with it what you will.
yeah, no, it's been a while since I've partook of the Chronicles of Narnia, but, C.S. Lewis, another great example of somebody. I mean, I feel like, and maybe this is just the natural way to feel. First of all, definitely constantly grappling with the feeling that I'm not living up to my potential. But what I love about C.S. Lewis is his ability to just write absolutely every thought that has ever crossed his mind and put it into this incredible body of work and sort of synthesize into maybe the most influential sort of Christian writer, at least in modern times, excluding the Bible and the old timers, of course. But yeah, he was a trippy dude for sure.
Yeah, he has some great imagery. I mean, movies are great, but there's 7 books. Go read them; they're really good.
Yeah, yeah. I wish when I was in college, and getting my religious education there, uh, I had to read a lot of C.S. Lewis books, but the sad part is, again, back to not living up to my potential, I was not a good student, never a good student. And so I read absolutely the minimal amount of C.S. Lewis I needed to pass my classes. And now I'm just like, oh, nuts. Now I got to go back and read all of them. And I do, and it's great. And that's just how school is, kids. Stay in school. Well, what
Well,
do you think about the veil? Does the veil concept bring anything up for you?
no, not really.
Okay, that's honest and that's good. That's easy peasy, baby. Great.
I just wanted to throw that one in there, and I'm not going to take up too much of your time.
Well,
I have
thank you so
prior
much.
engagements.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you so much for calling in. It's great to hear from you. I'm praying for you. I'm glad to see that, or I'm glad to hear that things are not the worst they could possibly be. And
Actually, yeah, I think the worst is behind, and I am feeling better.
Oh, good.
Because the surgery that I had to have is the one that's supposed to fix something and make my life better. I think it is. So
Okay,
we'll
that's
see.
good. That's great news. All right. Well, we'll make sure to keep praying for you. Thanks. Thank you so much for calling in. Make sure to check in again, okay?
All right.
All right. God bless. Goodness, great. Gotta keep the pray-ducer list going, folks. Here's the thing. I hope that you have not stopped praying for me, and if you have, please put me back on the list. It's the only thing keeping things moving around here. But it's an incredibly special part of our community, I think, that I do not find in other places, is getting to repeatedly is not the word I'd like to, but I guess maybe consistently check in with members of the community. And it's great to hear God's still working in people's lives. Enduring. We're enduring together, folks. Last but not least here, who do we got? We got Sir Darren, Night of the Hungry Panda, on
Hi,
stage.
Basil.
What's up, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Great. What's on your mind today? How are you?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, it was a really interesting topic with the whole veil and everything. So it's kind of interesting. I was reading up on it a little bit and looking into it, and Hebrews talks a little bit about it as well in Hebrews 9. And one thing that sort of like, as I was looking through it and kind of wondering about and checking into was Hebrews 9 gives a description of the things that are, there's the holy place, and then the divider is the veil, and then the next section would be the most holy place.
Yeah.
And inside the most holy place is where the Ark of the Covenant is located, and the manna and Aaron's staff and the tablets, and everything, obviously. And what's interesting, I was wondering, and so it came to my mind was, well, wait, I thought the Ark of the Covenant was lost during the whole Babylonian period. And so in the second temple, there actually was no Ark of the Covenant in the most holy place.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I hadn't
So,
thought about that.
so in some ways, we know in Scripture when we talked about the Ark of the Covenant, that thing, if people even touched it without doing the right things, they would instantly die.
Right.
And so what's kind of interesting was, again, in Hebrews 9, it talks about how the priests would go into the first section before the veil, and they would do that sort of on the daily basis to do all their, daily sacrifices and whatnot. But then there was the once a year sacrifice for everyone that the high priest did, and that was in the most holy place. And so
Right.
the reason that they would tie a rope to him and everything was because going in there, if he wasn't perfectly cleansed and everything with the blood of the bulls and the goats and all the rituals that you had to go through, he could potentially just instantly die because he came into the presence of God, because that was considered the presence of God on earth. But sort of the interesting thought is that because there was none of these holy items in there anymore, it's as if in the second temple time, and this is just me spitballing, this is don't take this as gospel when I say this, but it's as if they were just doing the rituals, the whole meaning and everything behind it, like the literal, this is the holy place of God, was gone. Like that had been lost. And so they were just practicing things on the daily to just be like, this is what keeps us good. And then on the yearly saying, oh, this is what makes us right with God now. And so when Christ died, it says the veil was ripped from top to bottom. Like basically so that, no one could say, oh, well, some dude came in there and did that, because it gives the descriptions of the veil and says that it was 4 inches thick. It was 60 feet high and 30 feet wide. And I mean, this thing was somewhere in the range of like 5 to 10,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Now, imagine like some dude is not going to just come in there with like a sword and just be like, oh, here, let me cut it in half. And then be like, there, it was done. That was a supernatural event that occurred. And so it was like for people to basically be like, okay, there's no. And so it is kind of interesting to just some of those ideas and thinking about that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm thinking, that's a very interesting point about the second temple. And yeah, just sort of carrying on the tradition without the literal presence of the stuff that was involved in the first temple. For better, for worse. That is a very interesting thing to point out. I do wonder, because of what you're saying, I mean, this veil is just sort of, I mean, if that thing tearing obviously had to have been supernaturally torn, and I think the people there would have known that. I think this would have been pretty well known, not to mention that a bunch of dead people came back to life and an earthquake, blew everything up the moment that Christ died. It makes me wonder, like, how, as a first century Hebrew priesthood, does that happen? And you still kind of go like, no, he wasn't the real Messiah. Like, how do you respond to that? What's the next day like? Like, you gotta, that's not just, again, the shattering of the veil or the tearing of the veil is not just the tearing of a physical object. It's literally tearing at reality. Their whole reality got torn in half. The whole structure of the universe, the deal, their interaction with the infinite, their relationship with God, just got absolutely supernaturally obliterated. And what do you even do after that? How do you, it's like there has to be this defense mechanism for a human being to go like, nope, let's get back to business as usual. This is fine.
Yeah, because again, like part of it was even Jesus' whole ministry on earth was constantly, rubbing up against all the Pharisees and Sadducees and what they were doing to position themselves as being holy and righteous. And it even says, like in Hebrews 9, verse 14, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God? Like just that dead works, it made me think of like, man, they were kind of going into this temple potentially just doing dead works. Like they were doing it over and over and over because it said This is what the law requires. This is what Moses requires. And then when Jesus comes on the scene, he's like, yeah, well, if you really knew what Moses had been saying and you really knew what the prophets had been saying, you would know who I am and you would know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when he died, it was like the ultimate, like, just nail driver of like, I'm gonna show you now for reals.
Yeah, I mean, back to the existential thing. This was an existential moment where the whole structure of reality crumbles around them, and you have two choices: either root the new reality in Jesus Christ and what happened, or you just defend it against everything that your eyes and perception tells you.
Yeah. Well, that was just a very interesting thing that I had noted. But I mean,
Yeah.
if somebody
No.
wants to figure out if that was the case or not, I was like, oh yeah, I never thought about how the Ark of the Covenant and all those holy items were sort of missing potentially
No,
from that
I hadn't
second
thought
temple.
about it at all. No, I think you're nailing it. Yeah, I'll need to go back and take a look and see, I think you might have to go kind of deep to find out where all those things were at that period in time. But that is an excellent question. I mean, and again, like I alluded to, that moment and everything that happened in that moment, and the not just the existential nature of reality crumbling all around society at that moment, but then people's responses. And we're in another period right now. I mean, even just like the last couple days, even more stuff. I mean, Biden was crazy the whole time. The auto pen, there's a whistleblower. We're going to learn about the auto pen, everything. He has dementia. He had cancer the whole time. The COVID stuff. That they're coming out with a new report about in 2021. They knew everything that would come of that, and it's again another version of like the veil, the society, the makeup of reality for a ton of people is shattering, and you can kind of watch it. I think partially we're watching people turn to Christ as the only viable way to get rooted in any other, any real reality anymore, or you just dive deeper into the madness and you just like fight for this reality that doesn't even exist anymore. I think we're
Yeah.
in a very heavy time, very
I
similarly.
I thought it was very interesting. We were talking about this recently with some people when we were doing our devotion, and we were talking about this certain paradox. I want to say it's called the Maxwell paradox, but I can't remember for sure. But basically, it's this idea that when you're in a situation that is extremely difficult, you can do one of two things. The paradox is you can either completely become overwhelmed by the situation and just say, well, there's all hope's lost. It's over. We might as well just give up and die. This is the end. Or the second is you will have some sort of hope that is not really rooted or grounded in anything realistic. Like, for example, this guy who was a prisoner, it's like, oh, well, we'll be rescued by Christmas. So that's his hope. And then when Christmas comes and goes, then they have no hope because that event has apparently come, it's gone, and now you just give up and die because you go back to the other one.
Right.
But the paradox is also some people can say, this may be the worst moment in my life, but this will actually become the most defining moment of my life.
Mm-hmm.
To where, even though it's such a struggle, the hope you now have is not in a set date or determined time. It is in that there is an assuredness that at some point these circumstances will change.
Right.
And so what we were talking about was, I think it's interesting how the entire Christian life that we live is sort of in that paradox where we have a future hope that we're always living for, but never knowing when that future hope is going to come into play, right? Either by the return of Christ, like, or by just the fact that, we perish and we are then absent from the body, present with the Lord.
Right.
And so that was a very interesting thing we were talking about. And so, like you're saying, with all the craziness going on in this world now, I think it's more and more important that Christians start to live in that paradox of, well, yeah, but if Christ is our hope, then the things of this world really aren't even our focal point.
Right.
Because for me, I don't know what it was, but even when the new pope was selected and everything, like it almost just, I don't know, I had this like overwhelming joy of like, oh man, if this is it, then we're like one day closer. Like, who cares if he's, the second beast or anything, the false prophet.
Right.
Like, we're now one day closer to like Christ returning and this all kind of fading away. And so it's like that almost seems like it should be more exciting than anything of like, oh, well, I don't like the fact that I might have to like get them, to go through all the turmoil and such.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen, man. No, that's great. I love that. You're bringing the heat, bro.
Well, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for calling in, man. Goodness gracious, Sir Darren. As always, wonderful to talk to you, buddy. I wish my voice would allow me to just keep going on with you, but you make sure to call in again.
All right. Well, you feel better.
Thanks, buddy. There we go. Look at us go. Jeez Louise, Sir Darren bringing the fire. Goodness gracious. I love how we can start out and repeatedly return to like the craziest, mind bending, reality questioning topics, both in the Bible and in science and in experience and everything. But coming back to the same conclusion. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing in the world. I think that's what we should be so grateful for. Thank you, Jesus, that he has been a part of my life the whole time, that questioning reality has been an option. I don't know what would have come of me. I mean, even thinking about it, of course, I was born into the church, always known Jesus, always loved Jesus, very grateful for that. But also was kind of one of those weird kids who was like thinking about death like way too early. And that can like freak some people out. But I think when you're already so assured in eternity, like it wasn't a freaky experience for me to be the one comprehending that at probably a way too young an age. But again, I think that's part of the benefit, the head start that living with Christ can give you. Again, even with just a sort of mental or emotional fortitude or endurance for those types of heavy things. All right, we're going to be landing the plane here in just a moment. We do have one more caller sitting in the waiting room. I'm going to give them a chance to say hi. This is Anonymous. So let me just restart this little timer here. There we go. Anonymous, you're on the air. What's going on, Anon?
Hi.
Oh, boy.
Can you
How
hear
are
me?
you? Yes, I can. How are you?
You can. Okay, great. Sorry, I don't know if I already missed some points because I've never done StreamYard before, so I was trying to set up my settings and things.
Oh, no
But
worries.
I just hope I'm not repeating something someone else already said, but to me, whenever I first heard about, Christ and the veil tearing and all of that, not only about our access to him and his access to us, of course, but just the thought that he took the keys to death, hell, and the grave with him when he died, I believe that was instantaneous. I don't feel like it took 3 days for that to happen. But, you know, we talk about death and the veil, or the, shuffling off this mortal coil into the void,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call
Crossing
it.
over type of thing.
Exactly. But to me, it's always been, I've always thought of the veil as being, just uh, that very brief moment when you're crossing from life to death, and you're
Yeah.
leaving this reality into the great unknown. And I did have a near death experience when I was a teenager. So I
Ooh.
definitely experienced that. And, it was the best day of my life was when I died, which is kind of crazy to say, but that is, our hope we have in Christ as well.
Yeah,
But,
amen.
I just, to me, I always think of that veil as being that that flash of light when we cross over. And also, someone mentioned something about the veil coming off of our eyes. And of course, it does seem like there's an awful lot of things being exposed, the curtain being pulled back on a lot of things, just sometimes
Right.
to find another curtain, of course. But,
Yeah.
all of those things, to me, I think of, there's a very thin veil between life and death. And also, people talk about kind of the veil thinning right now. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's, because of chemtrails or what, or CERN or whatever it is, but
Right.
it seems like there's a lot more supernatural experiences happening with people. I know when I had my near death experience, I thought I was the only one on earth that had happened to, because I'd never heard anyone talk about it before.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's a weird thing to come back and try and explain to people. My mom became hysterical when I tried to tell her, and shut me down right away. So I didn't talk about it for several years, being quite confused about it, till I talked to a chaplain, an army chaplain, that had actually been there the day I died and been praying for me while I was drowning. So I talked to him about it a few years ago, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard that all the time," and I'm like, "Oh, thank God," because I thought it was just me.
That's
So,
interesting. Why was your mother so hesitant? And would you like to share a little bit about your NDE with us?
well, it's kind of a long story, but I feel like it's because she was into witchcraft, and I was trying to tell her about these angelic beings and how they saved my life. And
Mm.
when she turned around, when she heard my stepsister screaming at the top of her lungs when we were drowning and trying to hang onto a tree, when she turned around and looked back upstream at us, all she saw was a bright white light around me. And what she should have seen was someone burnt to an absolute crisp, because I was uh, blistered by the time we got home that night. So I feel like the thought of her daughter drowning, when she was terrified of drowning, and I was too. Neither one of us could swim. But instead of seeing me, all she saw was this bright white light. And so then when I started trying to tell her that night about what happened, she just like became screaming hysterical, telling me, just stop talking. I don't want to hear it. And I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, you don't understand. They saved my life.
Wow.
And it was very bizarre. But all I can say is, eye is not seen, ears not heard, what we have coming to us, and, those who are in Christ. And the love that you will feel is nothing like on this earth. And so, like Sir Darren was saying, we're just one day closer to that, whether it's, his return or our exit out of here. Either way, I just, I, when I do talk about it to people, I just tell them it'll be the best day of life, you know?
Yeah,
And
wow.
so Yeah. So, a lot more to that story, but
I was gonna
I just
say, I
can't help.
mean, somehow you simultaneously drowned and was burnt to a crisp. That sounds like it is a bit of a
Oh,
long story,
and then
but
oh yeah, then I got out and promptly sat on a poison ivy plant. So I don't even want to go into all of that ugliness, but
just
um,
insult to injury there. Goodness gracious.
yeah, it was, and that was my third time drowning. You'd think that I would stay out of the water after that, but
Oh my gosh,
um,
girl, stay above water.
I know. Well, guess what? Good news is I can swim now. Finally, after a lifetime of swimming lessons and being revived from the bottom of a pool when I was 12 by a lifeguard, um, it shouldn't be something that scares me anymore, and it doesn't anymore. But
Hey, well, I'm
um,
glad to hear that. Well, you'll certainly
yeah,
have to call in again. Maybe when we have some more time, you can share more of your experience with us. That's always a very interesting
you know,
and faith-building testimony, as seeing
I
as
know
how
there's a
I've.
lot of people out there, yeah, that have written books about it and were told to come back and tell about it. I do not recall being told to tell a single soul. It was a very personal experience. Everything they showed me was all related to me, not saving the world.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
uh,
All
you
right.
know,
Well, the invite's open. You can always call in and talk about it if you'd like.
well, I know your voice is getting to you. You're a trooper, and we appreciate all you guys' efforts and everything. But anyway, yeah, just food for thought. The veil is not as far away as we think. So,
Amen. Amen.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Anonymous. Really appreciate you calling in and sharing with us. And
sure.
yes, if you will be back next Thursday, and if you ever feel like calling in again, I can't wait to talk to you more.
Well, you see my picture here in the back room?
No, you don't have your camera turned on, so I just
Okay.
see your thing here.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good because
Okay.
I've got a swollen eye. So I was really hoping that you couldn't see it.
Oh yeah, don't worry. You
All
are
right.
anonymous through and through. Thank you so much for calling in.
Okay. All right. Have a great weekend.
You
Thank
betcha.
you. All
Bye.
right. Bye bye.
Goodness gracious, folks, you never know what's going on out there, what people have experienced, and when they call in, what they're ready and not ready to talk about. That was, we did, wow, near-death experiences has always been a core interest of ours. Going back in the day, we did a near-death experience episode for Canary Cry Radio on the Joyspiracy theory, interviewed multiple people who had had near-death experiences. And of course, on that show, the extra long episodes, the near-death experiences were just a blip compared to the life experience people were sharing. Um, so always very interested and fascinated in that. Goodness gracious, I just am fighting the show burps over here. Excuse me, sorry. But I should probably wrap it up here. Where do we go? We're at 2.5 hours. Look at us go. Very impressive. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate you being here. Big shout out to the listeners coming in on the podcast version. Always welcome to join a live show on Thursdays, and the best way to not miss one is to jump on the Canary Cry text message alert system. Just text the word canary to the number 877-740-3226. You'll get our little notifications, but you can also text us back at that number, which I recommend you do. Let's see here, 717 says, you are not alone, Basil. Portal report. Can't wait to go through the tear in the veil portal to that higher dimension. Gon's called heaven. Yeah, very fun. I mean, that's what bigger mystery is there than experiencing the transition between this version of reality and a much more objective, real reality. And who knows where that is? Could be in the mind of God, could be in a total different realm altogether. We won't know until we get there. But I appreciate your patience with me, with my voice. And, oh, you know what we're going to do? This is exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to remember to give the people what they want, which is feeding the ducks. There we go. That feels right, doesn't it? Our favorite royalty-free stock music comes free with the streaming software. They never knew the masterpiece that they were just giving away for free. So go out there and make some friends with the ducks. Bring some bread, folks. And tune in next time to this episode of Canary Cry Clubhouse. Until then, you know what to do, okay? You think outside the cage.